I was infected via contaminated factor 8 because I'm a haemophiliac. I have to have factor 8 for my treatment, for my bleeds, and in the early 80s I was infected through BPL factor 8.
I was affected by the fact that my husband Tom received contaminated blood products in late 60s, 70s and the hepatitis disease was from that time. Tom and I were both in our mid-30s to mid-40s with a growing family.
Graham, he was a severe haemophiliac, so he needed factor 8 all the time. And I had to go home to my mother and sit down with Graham and tell him at 15 that he got HIV.
I'm a widow of a severe haemophiliac who died of AIDS in 1994. His name was John, and he also had hepatitis C.
I was 19, my husband was 21. We'd have been married for just under a year. My husband went into hospital and was told on a stretcher that he had HIV. No prior notice. Nobody else had said anything to us before. We were then called into a clinic where my husband was told that he was HIV positive. At that time I was not. I was negative. However, in the years that came, I was then diagnosed as positive.
I was diagnosed at 3 years old with severe haemophilia, and therefore that's when the treatment started. So from that very first injection of cryoprecipitate and then on to factor 8 and other products, that's when the infections began, so from word go.
I was infected in 1974, aged 11. I had multiple blood transfusions, 19 of them. One of them contained the hep C virus.
I was infected as a result of an eye straightening operation when I was 14 years of age. When I was in Newcastle working and living in England, I discovered, as an aside to a procedure I was having in the Royal Infirmary, that I had contracted hepatitis C and hepatitis B when I was 14 in that procedure.
I was newly married. We were looking forward to having a family one day. We both had great careers. I became HIV infected through my husband. My husband was a haemophiliac who had been given contaminated blood products.
I was infected following an infusion of American factor 8 in 1976. A few days after having the infusion, I turned bright orange and I was diagnosed with non-A, non-B hepatitis.
I was given factor 8 blood products when I was an 8-year-old child for a swollen knee. I was misdiagnosed with haemophilia, and I found out they'd given me hep C when I was 43 years old, 35 years later.
Haemophilia is in our family. I live with severe haemophilia myself, as do my two older brothers. And yeah, we lost our granddad as a consequence of contracting HIV from the use of blood products. And as a result of that, as a consequence, my nan was secondary infected, who we also lost.
I had my first daughter in 1983, and when she was 8 days old, I had a postpartum hemorrhage. I was rushed into hospital and unfortunately needed 4 units of blood. And then it was found out that I had hep C through the infected transfusion.
I was infected in 1987 after the birth of my first child in September. I hemorrhaged rather heavily and needed to have 4 units of blood. I then also had to have a second blood transfusion in February of 1991. We'll fast forward to 2015, when I was extremely ill, extremely ill. I was working at the time, and I'd lost an awful lot of weight for no apparent reason. And I was in with a new GP because I'd moved areas. So he tested me, and within a few days I got a telephone call. This was November 2015, telling me I was positive for hepatitis C.
I was infected when I was 14 years old, following a blood transfusion after a serious road traffic accident.
Basically, I've got beta thalassemia major. It's a rare blood disorder which requires me every 3 weeks to have 2 units of blood. And at the age of 21, I was diagnosed with hepatitis C through contaminated blood transfusions.
We were always aware of the haemophilia from probably about the age of 7, being the fact that it was in the family. There were several other uncles and cousins that were also haemophiliacs. I was placed into a children's home at the age of 13. On my 14th birthday a year later, my father came to visit, and then the week after my 14th birthday he came back again, which I felt quite strange at the time, but being a child I didn't question it. But he actually told me then that he was HIV positive. Around about the April of '86, he was sectioned under the Mental Health Act. We never saw him again. He died in September, the 22nd of September. It's been absolutely devastating to have your whole family, not just my father, but my father's brothers and cousins, all impacted by these viruses and sadly losing their lives. So the whole family has been destroyed.
I was born a haemophiliac, and I was infected via blood products for my haemophilia treatment, and I was told at the age of 12 that I'd been given HIV.
Well, I found out in the most bizarre way, really. I was more informed than found out. I actually got this letter through the post from my haematology department saying that I'd tested positive for the AIDS-associated virus. You've only got to use your imagination to know what implication that would have been for the family if that had gone to the wrong address, if that hadn't gone at all to me. I could have infected my wife. I was very angry that they sent it in a letter, not even a recorded letter. Didn't even have the decency to tell me to my face.
I wasn't sure how serious this was going to be. Tom had been told, he was informed it was a fatal disease, but it would take time, that they couldn't give him a time frame, but it was fatal, it was progressive, and he would die. That was what he was told.
You know, it's like our life was taken away. And 4 days before his sister's 12th birthday, I had to tell her that her brother had died.
When they told me what they'd done to me, I stood at a motorway bridge to jump off it. And basically, that's been my life ever since.
When I first found out that I had Hep C was 2006. I didn't really know what Hep C was, other than my GP phoning me to say, I need to see you urgently, and Hep C is really bad.
I was very concerned. I was very confused. I was very angry. The anger turned to sorrow and depression. It had a direct impact on my family and my family life, because when I married, I didn't know. I had 4 sons. My wife wasn't aware either, and it came as a bullet shock to her as much as it did to me. I had to have her go through the ignominy of having herself tested for hepatitis, and my sons, and it put a death knell into my relationship.
When we found out what had happened, we were stunned, devastated, all at the same time. This was the mid-1980s, and the climate of fear, discrimination, stigma associated with HIV and AIDS was horrendous, and we coped the best we could. We were silenced and we kept quiet.
Well, when I first found out, I didn't really know what hepatitis C was. It was something that you hear about, but you don't really know what it is. And when I did find out what it was, I was shocked. I didn't know what to do. I was crying, emotionally upset, panic, thought I was going to die, just shock, horror.
There's no words to describe that feeling, because every time I shut my eyes, I was just looking at a coffin, and I was sure in my mind that I was going to die.
I had no idea what it was. Nobody told me what it was. The medical staff said it was nothing to worry about.
I was absolutely devastated, and straight away my second daughter had to be tested. My husband had to be tested as emergencies. So the 3 days waiting for their results to come back was the worst days of my life. I could handle myself being infected, but if I'd infected them, there's no way that I could have coped with that.
I had a 25-year career. I worked up to project manager. I lost everything. I lost my whole life the day I found out. Everything ended. A big shield had gone up between me and my family because of what I'd found out.
Tom then found relationships difficult because of his chronic fatigue, which was a major problem, his acute depression, which was even more of a problem. In fact, Tom once said to me, "People will think I'm dead already," because he had no social interaction. He felt he couldn't go out, but he didn't want people in. It was a difficult time.
Very short time after we were married, I was pregnant, 7 months. I was forced, coerced, however you want to say it, into having an abortion, which meant labour. So I was in a room with people in their spacesuits, in my room of my own, going through labour on my own, without any help or assistance. It's changed my life completely. I watch other people with grandchildren, children, and no, it's not my life, never will be.
It completely changed our lives. Our marriage became very different. We became just brother and sister. No, there was no marital relationship. We had to give up the idea of any more children. My husband didn't want to kiss me or even touch me. He had his own things to eat and drink off and his own towel. And eventually we both had to give up work. I had to give up my teaching to look after him. And so life was very, very difficult at that time.
After Graham passed away, I had the press rigging me up. I had them banging on the door. I had them asking me if I shared the same cutlery as Graham. And terrible things. And even people that were in shops in our local villages were saying terrible things.
I felt like a guinea pig because it was evident from the records, my records, that I saw when I was in my 30s, that my consultant had willfully or knowingly run the gauntlet with my life, and I contracted hepatitis. It wrecked my marriage. It also had serious impact on my career, and my career had been good to there. And I found myself having to go on medication and treatment, which did not help me emotionally or socially. So the impact was very serious.
But with the contaminated blood scandal, I don't actually know really where I fit into society, because when you've been deemed to be cheaper than a chimpanzee or expensive to maintain, as a person, I don't know really how I fit in. The downside of that is that you're constantly being judged, you're constantly trying to prove yourself, and within the family unit, it's destroyed us. My parents have watched every step of the way, literally mopping up the blood, the sweat, the tears, the sick. They've been told, we've lost count of how many times I've been told I'm going to die, and each time I don't die, it's, oh well.
It had a huge impact, particularly on my husband, and I became his carer. I became his support, his strength. Even though I was also HIV positive, it was he that got seriously ill. And when we had vows of marriage that we loved till death us do part, I didn't really expect it to be that soon, and to be in such horrendous circumstances with such lack of compassion.
It devastated my entire life at the time. I went from having everything to having nothing really overnight, not even really having a future, because I was told I only got 2 or 3 years to live. Go away, make your will. Obviously, I've been on medicine ever since to counteract the HIV, but they've been very toxic, and to this day, I still have to take every day a toxic combination of pills just to stay alive, and that's how it will be till I die. I lost my job. I nearly lost my wife. We split up for 3.5 years. I lost my mind in the end because the drugs were playing havoc on my body. We've had to live on the breadline a lot of that time. Benefits, even been investigated by benefit people. You know, it's ridiculous.
It has changed me in that following the start of the treatment, I became unable to work as a family doctor. At the age of 43, I had to retire, and affected my mind. It affected my relationship between my 2 boys and, of course, my wife. I still think that there is a barrier between me and my boys because for about 2 years to 3 years, I was basically spending 22 hours in bed asleep.
So we just took every day at a time, started planning my own funeral when I used to be awake at night at 2 in the morning, thinking how much longer have I got. So yeah, lots of things go through. You go to a very dark place.
I lost my job due to ill health, and I've recently had surgery, so I've had my gallbladder removed. I've got ongoing complications and problems. I just feel like every day I wake up with a death sentence hanging over my head, just waiting to die.
It changed my life completely. It changed my life with my relationships. I had a stigma over me, and I was afraid to tell people because in my community, in my cultural community, it was forbidden. It was something that we shouldn't talk about, and it was shameful.
I was entitled to a family life. I never had that. I grew up in a children's home. My father died of a virus that I couldn't speak about, a virus that I couldn't tell my friends because of the stigma.
I don't know, to lose my son was just terrible.
I use the word devastation, but it has many different meanings. But devastation, I say, is probably the only thing that could come close to what this has done in every aspect of life. No children. I don't have a family now to watch grow up, so everything ends with me.
I feel we've been treated very badly. Nobody's listened to us over the years. It's like knocking on a door and it never opening. And
I've been swore at by a consultant. I've been looked at like I'm diseased, disgraced. The trusts I'm with, there's nothing, there's no help, there's no nothing. It's just like, it's a fight. I'm fighting a losing battle.
The treatment by every successive government has been diabolical. The haemophiliacs, those of us who have been infected by our haemophiliac husbands, have been tossed under the carpet, into the long grass, and trod on and abused by every subsequent trust or support system that they put in place. We've lived half lives, is what we've done. We've lived half lives.
Oh, I've been betrayed. And now, because I am still here, I'm still alive, I'm met with contempt and hate because of who I am.
I feel very angry because I haven't been informed until I discovered that I was infected. I feel very confused because I had been given something without any advice or warning, and I feel very depressed because the impact was completely negative on my life, my family life, and also on my career. It took me from a position where I was a successful man to one who became dependent on the state.
The way it changed my life is that I've been shackled to a trust that the government set up. They refused to give us grants or to help us. The only option they gave was to get my husband, dying of AIDS, to sign over our house, our home to them. And to this day, 3 decades later, I'm fighting this. I still fight this trust, which is being closed down, but refusing to acknowledge the wrong it did in placing someone under duress to sign over their home.
I feel we've been treated so unfairly by successive governments who've failed to live up to their responsibility of what they've done to us, of what they've done to my family, and what they've done to my life. We were treated like a commodity. That's what we were treated like, money. It was down to money at the end of the day and certain practices. And that's so wrong, so wrong.
There's like clear negligence in terms of the sort of financial and social support that she should have been receiving while she was still alive. You know, what my nan had to cope with, not only being a widow, but also being co-infected. And I find it really upsetting and that she didn't receive the type of care and support that she should have.
Lies, deception, cover up, everything you can think of has been done to keep us in a neat little box to cause as least trouble as possible for those responsible for this.
I think the whole thing has been dealt with in an absolutely appalling manner. This should have been dealt with a long time ago, when it happened. Not dragged out this long. These people are already sick. They're already fighting for their lives, and it's being made worse by having to fight for justice. It shouldn't be like that.
I feel very angry at times, and I feel also very depressed at times. A lot of crying. I do a lot of crying.
I'd love to have the doctor who did it to me in front of me to tell me why. But then not only that, why would then the NHS carry on hiding that info from me until I'm, you know, in my mid-40s? It's crazy, absolutely crazy.
I don't actually know how I feel because I tend to walk around a lot of the time feeling completely empty inside. I want to cry because when I think of all the friends that I've lost, I want to cry because of what I've had taken away from me.
You know, I feel really bitter towards these individuals that they knew something was wrong and they still went ahead and did it, and they carried on doing it.
I should be looking forward to having grown-up children, perhaps grandchildren of my own. I have none of that. I have no family. It's taken everything away from me.
Setting up a charity for us. Who wants to live on charity? Certainly not me, not my family. I had to beg for everything over the years. I had to send begging letters to a charity for money. I don't know if anybody can even fathom out how that feels, live off benefits feel like you're the scum of the earth in some people's eyes. You can't tell people why you're not working.
What kind of a life do you call it when not one moment of the life I've lived so far has been by my own choice? It's all been mapped out for me by other people. It will never be known that you've lived just half a life, but that's what you've done, because nothing was just allowed to take a natural course. Make of yourself what you will in life, because it's all plotted out for you by people either financially or stigma, everything else. So yeah, that's how I best describe it. Just half a life. You've never lived your potential. Never.
What I want from the inquiry is the absolute truth, no matter where it goes.
I want the truth. I want justice. And I want my life back. I'm never going to get my life back, but I want to enjoy what's left of my life. This is manslaughter. I'm living a slow death. Never know what's round the corner. This is what the NHS and government did to me. And this needs to be corrected. Justice. This is what I want.
I want it acknowledged that these victims have been deprived financially, socially, in all aspects of their lives. And I don't want another glib politician to say to me, but if they hadn't received the treatment, they would have died at the time. Because part of them did die at the time. Part of their lives was taken from them. They were robbed of part of their lives.
Well, I want the truth to come out. I think that lies have been told, papers have been destroyed, and too long everything's been swept under the carpet. We need and we deserve answers to what happened.
I want truth. I want justice. I want people to know what we've been through. Not just us directly, but how it's affected our lives massively. Decisions we've made and the people and personalities that we've become that have been taken away by the lies and the treatment and the scandal and the stigma surrounding HIV.
We need closure, and no amount of money will bring closure, but justice has to be seen to be done. And that's, for me, what this has always been about. No amount of money will uninfect me. No amount of money will give me back my career. No amount of money will take away the stigma and the intolerance and the contempt that I face very, very regularly.
I want someone to put their hand up and say, this is how it happened. Have a complete open book that anyone can look at. That's what I want. And obviously, I want some kind of help with my family. I can't get life assurance. I can't, there's so many things wrong with this. And England is so far behind the rest of the world in giving us support. That's what I want.
I want to know that that the departments who are responsible and the individuals who are responsible will be held responsible. This is an opportunity to put things right, and it's about time somebody did.
I want the charitable trust set up to support us to be held to account. I want their staff and the trustees, past and present, to explain their actions. I want it acknowledged that we were pioneering women. We were the first women to be infected with HIV and how we coped with it and what we did. I want that recognised and accounted for.
I need the politicians to remember this. I need the NHS to remember that this tragedy, that this horror that has gone on for all these years is still going on. Please don't just brush this aside. Something needs to come out of this inquiry. The truth, justice. Please, we need it.
I don't think it's sort of personal accountability per se. I think it's just try and understand, what decisions were made, who were they made by, why were they made as they were, and why weren't, you know, the likes of my grandparents and also other members of the community, you know, why weren't they more protected?
I want the answers to my questions. When did they know there was a problem? What did they try and do to sort the problem out? Why hadn't they looked for people sooner? They need to find every last person that was infected and give them a chance of life.
So I think the government need to step up and make sure that even on a standard blood test, that hepatitis C should be put in on that test. As far as I know, it's not.
We need to know, and I want to see justice, because my life has been ruined because of the NHS and the government, and it's unfair. I've had to stop everything. My livelihood has changed, you know, it's been ruined.
It all needs to come out. The truth needs to be told. The victims deserve justice. Sick people shouldn't be fighting for justice. They've been put on death row for a crime they didn't commit.
I want the absolute truth. They can't hurt us with the truth because they can't hurt us any more than what's already been done to us. But it's time for the truth. It's time for us to at least try and live whatever time we've got left with a bit of dignity of knowing that finally somebody had to take responsibility. And this country saw what has been done to us, and we've been hidden away for this long.
Look at what you could have done, and look at what you have done.
I've been campaigning for 38 years over blood products, and I have been ignored. Please listen now.
Don't ever let this happen to any other victim group again. And consider those who are left behind, who have lost loved ones through no fault of their own. Where's the compassion? Where's the caring? What exactly is the National Health Service?
My whole life has been a fight, an unnecessary fight. I want this to end, and I want it to end with this inquiry.
And I just hope, upon all hope, that I'm still alive, by the time this inquiry ends and I can have some closure and move on with however long I've got left of my life.
Thank you.